Ruud, and this is going to be an interesting topic on international communication styles. Before we start, can you provide a brief background of yourself?
Yes, I would be happy to. I'm Dutch born and raised, in the city of Rotterdam, and my dad happened to be working in the shipping and logistics industry. Actually, the company that he was a financial manager at was busy in the barging world, so going up and down the Rhine River into Germany and dealing basically with cement. So it was a cement carrier, and the company owned a couple barges. So that means it's like vessels that would go up and down the river. And well, I was kind of infected by that part. He's been trying to kind of like steer me away from entering the industry, but after finishing high school, I was interested in looking into industries that would provide like guaranteed employment, and that particular industry, the logistics industry, well, that was looking really good. Of course, in a big port like Rotterdam, there's a whole lot of things to do. So I went through college, got my degree, and started working as an agent, or like being a port captain. And so I'd be, visiting vessels that would enter and leave the port, and that kind of got me infected a little more, and started looking, building a little career in the freight forwarding industry, and I was able to continue that when moving to the United States to marry my wife.
That's interesting. And can you explain why that it would be helpful to learn more about people's communication styles in various parts of the world?
Yes, absolutely. We're all pressed for time, and everything is driven by a certain amount of activities within a certain period of time. And as we do communicate quite differently throughout the world, in different parts of the world. Of course, there is first the confusion part that may take the front seat, and that means if you're talking about legal matters, that might just become a big issue. And looking at the way people would use English, because that would be the international language of choice. And and we all have quite different expression. For example, here in the United States, we would tend to be more direct. If we go up north, looking at Canada, people seem to not be as direct, but a little more, like a little more able to discuss stuff. And so that's already making a difference. Then going across the world, or going to the other side of the world, looking at for example, the Indian subcontinent, and the way the Indians and Pakistani would use their English language, it's quite different from ours. And and then we're looking at like the United Kingdom, for example. Their English is a lot different than the way we tend to use English.
So which areas are more focused on facts and which are more on emotions?
Americans, as we are, like, we're very fact driven. We like to kind of cut to the chase, and also bring to the table what you're coming for, and also what you want to discuss. If you're talking business, if you're talking about transactions at all, so put your cards on the table, spell it out. And then, there might be like, a confrontation part, there might be a provocation part. But then also, that might just be meant, seriously or not as seriously. So, of course, a lot of people abroad might misunderstand that. Where I'm from, for example, you're in Europe, when we would discuss matters with Americans, we would be, kind of like steered away from where we want to go, because, people would joke about certain matters, and then we would take it seriously. So that means, okay, you're kind of getting away from the subject matter. You're getting away from, actually you're not getting closer to each other, and also not closer to the piece of business that you want to pursue.
Are there any language barriers or areas that are more prone to confusion?
Um, well, certain language barriers that might be a big one. Of course, now we're of course doing a lot of business with Asian countries. Of course, there's China. Hong Kong is the part of China that will be kind of separate. People there are more, like say more in our realm. So that means it's more, there might be more words that are being used, but then also the words might be confusing. But then they're not as let's say moralistic or moderate as the Chinese on the Chinese mainland. They tend to be moderate in the beginning, and then they kind of become more and more direct, throughout the process. Like if you're talking building business, if you're talking business negotiations, if you're talking even like certain transactions that take place in the beginning, it's very friendly, but it's also very, let's say, I wouldn't use the word vague, but it's more, let's say, holding off on the subject matter, and then once people get a hold on what's really going on, then the directness increases. And then also, there is of course the language, and the language might not be understood well enough. And the danger now that I see is something like translation services online, and they do translate words, but they don't translate meanings. They don't translate the whole sentence as the sentence is meant. Then you might have like a combination of words that are in a sentence, but then if you would put the sentence together, you become, you're starting to look like, or you're starting to look at a garbled composition. So it's not really a sentence anymore. It's a composition of words that don't make a sentence.
And where have you seen some success in business?
Actually throughout, and it doesn't really matter where. I've seen successes in continents like Africa. I've seen successes in the Middle East. Actually, the people in the Middle East, if we're looking at the Arab subcontinent, we're looking at the area where like Saudi Arabia is, where the Emirates are. There's less use of words, but more use of numbers. So they tend to look more at the numbers and the facts. And summarize the facts, give me the facts, and and avoid the words. So if you can work with that, then you can get things done pretty quickly. I'm looking at my home continent, Europe. Similar matter. It just comes down to whether you make sense or not. You need to make sense. You need to summarize everything. So cut out the words. Just limit the use of words and give more facts. So if you can get more factual, of course that depends from area to area. I did work a lot with people in the United Kingdom. They tend to be more verbal. They use more words. And then if you go to the European continent or like the mainland, there's less use of words. I can, for example, use the example of like the Germans. And the Germans are all very factual. You need to state everything. Then if you want to go into like the proposal or the business proposal, and in whichever business you're at, it needs to be all factual. Then the facts are on the table. Then of course there is thanks for giving me those numbers and those facts, but I already have my contacts doing this and that. So there's the comparison matter. Then you kind of need to make your case after that. So actually you should have your case ready before you propose, because you need to be ready for their resistance. Then you need to kind of get in, make your case, counter offer, and then see where you can end up. So that's for the Germans that I've worked with a lot and actually still work with quite a bit. Looking at other areas in the world, looking at Southeast Asia, for example, you're looking at Indonesia, you're looking at Singapore. Also, you can kind of stretch out to Australia, but then the Australians are way different. So I'll focus more on the Southeast Asian part. That's more like, okay, they want to pick your brain. The people there want to pick your brain at first, so they don't come out and tell them what they're up to. They want you to figure out what they're doing. Then throw in your proposals, your ideas, your ideas to to get business or to start building business. Then their ideas come out, and they kind of tend to cater more to what you would like to hear. But then it's kind of like, yeah, it ends up in kind of like an ambiguity area. So that means there is no exact understanding from either side. Like, okay, where are we? So that's kind of like a dangerous area as well. So that means if you get to certain conclusion, you get to certain business decisions, you need to write them down, and that goes across the board. Of course, it goes across the board with anything legal. You need to have it in writing, but especially with the people in Southeast Asia. I've seen some good successes there too, like talking about Thailand, for example, talking about Indonesia, dealing with people that are manufacturing automotive parts, dealing with people that are manufacturing musical instruments. For example, well, for sure, the instruments that are made of wood and strings. So that's, there's always an opportunity.
And thank you, Ruud, for sharing today.
Okay, you're welcome.